Between the two of them.
The inside of coats.
Barker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Just a good old boy, never meaning no harm. Beats all you never saw, been in trouble with the law since the day they was born. Straightening the curves, flattening the hills. Someday the mountain might get 'em, but the law never will. Making their way the only way they know how. That's just a little bit more than the law will allow. Just a good old boy, they wouldn't change if they could. Fighting the system like a true modern day Robin Hood.
We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the VRRC and the start of a new championship here. Always an exciting time. We've had a couple of weekends away since our touring car championship was concluded, and now we head from Europe to America, from tin tops to rear-wheel drive sports cars, and a real fan favourite. It's time for the return of the Mazda MX5 in the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Turbo Cup. Round 1 coming to you from the iconic Laguna Seca, the Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca to give it its full title. Andy McEwan and Jack Oliphant here in the comms box to talk you through all of the action. Jack, welcome back. Good to be working with you again after a couple of weeks away from each other. I've only just got over the excitement of the Touring Car Championship European Tour, and now we're heading into a championship that I think has all the ingredients to be even more exciting.
Yeah, the touring cars was brilliant, but the thing that made it as sort of engaging and as exciting as it was the hybrid. And of course, we stuck the hybrid on this MX5. So yes, you may be tuning into VRRC and you might think you'd be watching a repeat because it's just an MX5 championship. But no, we've got the hybrid that we use for the touring cars, stuck it on the MX5. Apparently it's very exciting. It'll add a lot of spice into the mix in terms of racecraft as well and strategy through the races. And we're also, for the majority, Andy, spending it on new tracks to VRRC because, of course, like you mentioned, we're in the States now.
We are. America has many things going for it, so I'm told, but mainly it is its racetracks that have a real appeal to me anyway. Laguna Seca is where we will start things. Then we head to Road America for the first of a handful, as you can see, of these 40-minute races. The race format, which we trialled last time out with the touring cars, having most of the events 2 15-minute races, and then the odd 40-minute pit stop race. Well, we're having a few more of those in. We've also extended the sprint races back to 20 minutes now, so that's the format for tonight, 2 20-minute races. In a week's time, though, we head to Road America for our first 40-minute pit stop race. Then Circuit of the Americas in Texas hosts our third night of racing before the world-famous Road Atlanta, and then Bridgehampton, certainly a new circuit for me, will take us into the second half of the season. That will also visit Sebring, Virginia International Raceway, and it all concludes at Watkins Glen, a 40-minute pit stop race to decide the championship. And I think that's a really smart move, Jack, having American racetracks for this particular championship, because American racetracks typified by long straights, high average speed, perfect for slipstreaming, and that is a word that is synonymous with Mazda MX-5 racing.
Well, you'd know better than most of us now, Andy, wouldn't you? Having won a championship last Tuesday, thought I'd drop you in there like that.
Thanks, Jack.
Nice. It's okay. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's people tune into MX5 racing purely to see the slipstream because they know there's going to be hundreds of overtakes pretty much every single lap. And people also jump into, say, we use Assetto Corsa, but other simulators like, say, iRacing, say it quietly on this broadcast, and they race in the MX-5s because it's the first free car, but also people stay in the MX-5s because it is one of the most exciting cars to drive and it's very accessible. And when you stick something like the turbo on top with the long straights, with plenty of people on the grid, it's soon to be a fan favourite.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the MX-5 is so popular because it is quite a user-friendly car, isn't it? But it is worth pointing out, as you've said, this is sort of the MX-5, the adult version of the MX-5, because we've got that hybrid. There's a little rear wing you can see on the back of the car. Apparently, Rich Hayden was in here talking to us a little while ago, saying the car is very slidey. It's a real handful, and that will make life a challenge for the drivers, I'm sure. But that's kind of what we want. We don't want this to be too easy. We expect to see some good racing. We expect to see lots of side-by-side action, but we also want to see the drivers really having to work for it, and I'm pretty sure that they will indeed have to. Prizes on offer as well for this championship. We've got the trophies back again for the first, second and third places, but also, Jack, we have the return of prizes supplied by AGON, and we're very, very happy about that.
We are absolutely are. It just adds another incentive for drivers to carry on coming back, and it means that when drivers are towards the sharp end of the championship, they're playing for more than just pride. Basically, yes, okay, the trophies were nice to have on the shelf. I'm sure the drivers who won them at touring cars, are displaying them delightfully. However, a proper monitor is always something to get very excited about. And as you mentioned, they're supplied by AGON. 34-inch curved display for the outright winner. I use a 32-inch non-curved gaming display. And I have to say, it is top-notch. So the AGON, especially, and the curved nature of that one will be absolutely top dollar, I'm sure. 27-inch display and a 24-inch display as well. The 24 and the 27, perfect if you're using triple monitors, for instance. The 34-inch is potentially, you don't need triple monitors. You just play off that if you're using it as a simulator anyway, of course, which most of these drivers are because, well, that's what they're racing on. So, yeah, fantastic to have AGON back partnering us. And, of course, the trophies are back again as well.
Absolutely. We thank AGON for their support, and I'm sure the drivers will as well, because they're going to be really fighting hard for those prizes. Right, we mentioned the car, the Mazda MX5, which on the face of it looks pretty much as you would expect from a Mazda MX5. An interesting comparison here, though, and it'll go to show just how different this car is, this version of the MX5, to the one that we've raced with previously here on the VRRC. It was probably 6 months or so ago, maybe longer now, that we last had an MX5 Cup here on the VRRC. And for that one, we used the car on the left, which was the standard 2-litre normally aspirated engine, 160 brake horsepower, roughly 200 newton meters of torque. You can see all of the stats there. And it is a completely different beast that we're greeted by now. It's still that 2-litre, but now with a turbo attached, 240 brake horsepower out of a car that weighs about as much as a shoebox, about 300 newton meters of torque. And then we add the hybrid, which has, it's exactly the same hybrid system as we had on the touring car. So it gives you roughly an extra 50 brake horsepower for 10 seconds, and they're limited to 15 activations over the course of a race. So 150 seconds, essentially, of hybrid use. You can use it whenever you like. You can use it more than once on a lap. Indeed, they will do on many of the tracks we're racing at. There is a 2-second cooldown between each activation, but you can keep on spamming that hybrid button as much as you like. We've also got different tyre compounds that will become particularly relevant, I think, in the pit stop races, and fully adjustable brake bias and a fully adjustable differential as well, which will make a big difference, I think, actually. Certainly brake bias, Jack, it's something that when I've raced MX-5s in other sims, you've not been able to adjust, and it's the first thing that I always reach for as a driver. If the balance isn't quite right, just tweaking that brake bias forward and backwards, and maybe tweaking the diff as well, can make the world of difference.
Especially in the early laps. And to be honest, we don't really talk about enough about the fact that you can adjust the brake bias, the differential, and there's options with tyres. We've sort of banged on already about the hybrid system and how that adds a little bit of strategy, or adds a little bit of extra sort of not incentive, but thought process towards how these drivers are actually driving the car. But when it comes to stuff like the brake bias and the differential, you can change the brake bias, especially, I think, in the car during the race. So in the early laps, when the brakes are slightly cold, you can adjust the brake bias slightly, and then as you get 2 or 3 laps in, you can adjust it back. And it's something that, you know, these drivers, a bit like F1 drivers, how they basically have to operate a computer whilst they're driving. It's a lot less, it's a bit more diluted, but again, it's something else to think about.
It's still far too many buttons for my little brain to comprehend, so I'm glad I'm just talking about it rather than having to do it on this occasion. We will get into the action very shortly. Actually, the qualifying session, I believe, has just begun. Before we do head into that qualifying session, though, let's take a look, shall we, at the host venue for our first round, the Mazda Raceway, Laguna Seca.
Welcome everyone to the first round of the AGON by AOC MX5 Turbo Cup. We're here at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca for the first track guide of the season. Starting the lap, we're going through the flat out kink of turn 1. It's all about getting over to the right hand side of the Andretti hairpin. Down 2 gears, keep it quite tight to the inside, hook up this curb on the left hand side to get a nice run towards turn 3. Use only the blue and white curbs here, anything else will slow your momentum down. Turn 4 is a very similar story, but with a little bit more entry speed. Again, hooking up the curbs nicely and not touching the sand. And now we head up to turn 5. Slightly earlier apex for this one. Really focusing on getting the car set up for the exit, as we're carrying even more speed now towards turn 6, which is the big commitment corner on the track. Find your turning point, nail the curb on the left hand side, use all the road on the right, and then back to the left hand side for the shortest run and best angle up into the corkscrew. The back end goes a bit loose under braking here, but just focus on getting it to the apex and then using all of this curb on the right hand side. Straight back over to the right hand side to set up rainy curve, really power through the corner, quite a late apex, and then back over to the left hand side to set up turn 10. Get a little bit of oversteer on the entry, but we managed to carry good corner speed, and then back over to the right hand side for the most important acceleration zone on the track. Really set up the exit nicely at the final corner, and then it's just going through the motions, up the gears, shortest line to the finish, and there is a lap of Laguna Seca.
A great look at the Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca there, courtesy of Lewis Edwards, who I should mention is our new broadcast producer, shall we call him? I'm sure I can think of something else to call him later in the night, but we welcome him along to the VRRC broadcasts, and annoyingly, it looks like he's quite talented behind the wheel as well, so a great look there at the circuit. Appropriate that we're starting here as well, the Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca for this Mazda MX5 Championship. A great little track, this, Jack.
It absolutely is, and it's obviously got one of the most famous corners in motorsport. Obviously, the corkscrew, an overtaking opportunity is available, but is also slightly ambitious by some drivers who maybe even tend to take the outside line, and it's right uphill onto the entry. The hybrid would be an interesting use up there. I think we might see a couple of desperate moves, and to be honest, we enjoy desperate moves because it gives us something to shout about here in the commentary box. We're going up to towards it in a couple. Well, I was going to say in a couple of corners time. I lost my bearings there. Up now, you can see all the way uphill, Andy. He hit that hybrid now. You'd probably be on it for about 10 seconds. You might be a bit of a waste, but if you're going for a big move, you could end up falling flat in your face and going straight on over that second apex, couldn't you? And it could really mess your lap up. But obviously in qualifying, they're not allowed to use a hybrid system at all. Yeah, no hybrid in qualifying, but I'm intrigued to see how that works in the races, because as we've sort of alluded to, the MX5 is a very slipstreamy car, so overtaking shouldn't be that hard anyway. I mean, throw the extra hybrid in and you could have some real serious closing speeds from one car onto another. So, yeah, it can be interesting to see just how much that's actually worth. Can you, for example, sit in the slipstream, as Eric Axelsen, who we're riding on board with, was just there, and not use your hybrid and keep up with someone who is using the hybrid? These are all things that the drivers will learn over the course of the 220 minutes tonight. But Eric Axelsen already at the top of the timing tables, and that's kind of where we expect him to be, not only because he's our reigning champion here at the VRRC. He wrapped up the Touring Car Championship European Tour a couple of weeks ago, but because, Jack, I'm reliably informed he is very, very handy in one of these MX5s. I didn't cover the last VRRC MX5 Championship. You did, and I know he was up there, wasn't he? Oh, yes, you've thrown me in it now, haven't you? Yes, I can't exactly remember where he finished, because I can't even remember where everybody finished in the touring cars, but he was rather handy, and I think he joined the VRRC community when we were doing the Civic Cup, so all of a sudden we were thinking he was going to be a bit of a front-wheel drive specialist and everything like that, but then he jumped into the MX5s, and I do believe he was one of the front-running drivers, along with the likes of, well, we even mentioned it while the track walk was going round then, or the track map was going round, the likes of Jack Smith and Jordan Brennan. He was keeping on pace with them, and we know how stupidly fast they are. Obviously, they're not part of this championship, unfortunately, but that does leave Axelsen with an opportunity to really stake a claim early on in this championship. In the touring cars, he got a bit of a reputation as well for being very quick in qualifying, getting the most amount of pole positions than anybody else, I believe. So, really early on, he's already staking that claim in the MX5s. That's right, he had 5 pole positions in the touring cars across 8 weeks, so he really was dominant in qualifying. However, not dominating this session, Kyle Felvers with an improved lap time there, moving to just 32 thousandths away from him. I expect Kyle to go well here after a couple of wheel drive championships in the Civic Cup and then the touring cars, which Kyle has been quite vocal about. He much prefers rear wheel drive. I'm expecting a return to the form that took him to being a championship contender in the Cayman Cup, which was right back at the start of the year. So looking for big things from Kyle over the course of the next 8 weeks. And he's second fastest at the moment in qualifying. Elliot Dalton-Ayres is third. Nicky Taylor is in place at the moment, beginning what we believe might be his final championship with the VRRC for a little while. He's going to step away and concentrate on some real life commitments. So good to see Nicky near the pointy end, and Josh Martin rounding out the top 5 of what is a very, very healthy grid, and a couple of new names out there for us, Jack, as well, and indeed returning names. Good to have Nathan Blank, for example, back on the grid, but a couple of drivers out there who we've not seen race with us before. Yeah, and there's Sam Zero, who's currently sat in 11th place, joined a little bit late in the practice session and just got here in time for qualifying. As I said, he's currently in 11th, just trying to get himself into the rhythm, maybe, trying to get used to the drivers around him. Maybe, you know, the fact that he's not sat in a slipstream because he doesn't know anybody, potentially. He can't work with anybody yet. That might hurt him a little bit. But very distinctive livery there with the Zorro Z on the side of his car, or the Zero Z, I should say, on the side of his car. And then I believe the driver behind him. Now, I'm going to let you introduce him, Andy. 1, because there he is, and unfortunately not having the best time of it. And 2, you actually know him from, well, you know of him in real life.
We couldn't have timed that cut any better, could we? Alok Iyengar having a few problems there in his qualifying session. I think he's just heading back to the pits, which will be the end of his session once you fast track to the pit lane. Sadly, you're not able to go back out there. But yeah, Alok is one of the front runners in the F1000 Championship, which is one of Britain's fastest growing single-seater championships, or going through a resurgence, really. F1000's been around for decades, the very, very rapid motorbike engine single-seaters. And yeah, Alok has been racing in that for a number of years. So his first time racing with us at VRRC. No idea how much sim racing experience he has, but 12th at the moment, so just into the second half of the grid. But I'm sure once the racing gets underway, he'll be looking to move forward from there. Andy Carroll is a much more familiar name here at the VRRC, though. He is just inside the top 10 right now, ahead of Jens Verhoeven, entering into his third season now of racing with us is Jens. But Andy Carroll has been a regular, and interested to see how he gets on now with the transition back to rear-wheel drive. There are always some drivers who seem to prefer front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. I would argue that perhaps Andy is a bit more of a front-wheel drive specialist, so how he handles this Mazda will be interesting to watch.
Well, I was going to make the same argument for Reese Bell as well, all the way down in 14th place, and well, we're very used to seeing him right at the front end. Maybe not going for championships, but definitely helping out his teammates Nicky Taylor and Carl Felbus, that's for sure. Both of which are well and truly within the top 5. We've already spoken about Carl Felbus, obviously being 300ths of a second behind Eric Axels. As Ethan Hill has to go round. Was that Andy Carroll who was having to go round? That's going to ruin his run, unfortunately, because he was sick. Not up on sector 1 or 2, though. Elliot Dalton Ayres, well, he's in 3rd place at the moment as well. So Carl Felbus, Elliot Dalton Ayres, and Nicky Taylor. I was just bringing up Elliot because I thought he was going to go faster. Unfortunately, he had a relatively poor sector 3, I believe. His sector 1 and 2 were certainly quicker anyway, but yeah, not the best time for him in the end. He's still half a second off pole position, but the 3 HFT drivers really at the sharp end in the top 4 at the moment.
Yes, and I expect them to work together in the races, because MX5 racing is definitely something that you can benefit from having teammates around you, I think, because of the nature of the slipstream, the draft in these cars. Certainly very powerful, so you can sort of gang up against other drivers if you've got a couple of teammates around you. Wouldn't be at all surprised to see them doing that. But of course, first round of the season, Jack, and they'll all be wanting to try and assert themselves as the number 1 driver, if you like. We don't tend to hear much about real team orders, at least as far as number 1, 2 or 3 drivers are concerned at HFT, but they are very, very good at supporting whichever driver sort of makes a break for it in the points. So they'll all be wanting to try and score well out of this first weekend to establish themselves as the driver that the others perhaps are going to be helping as the rest of the season wears on.
Yeah, and it hasn't come without its slight conflict here, there, and everywhere, as most teams in motorsport do go through. But I think that actually sort of builds their relationship, builds their team morale a lot stronger, you know, because equally Nicky Taylor's very quick and Carl Felbus has sometimes fallen over him, and it's the other way around occasionally. And so they know what it's like to sort of need that teammate mentality, and know what it's like when the other teammate doesn't follow through, if that makes sense as well. So it's more the case of they want one of their drivers to end up taking the victory and taking the championship. They'll do everything in their power to make sure at least one of them is on that top step. As the checkered flag drops, though, it's Eric Axels who's currently on pole position, Carl Felbus, Elliot Dalton Ayres, Nicky Taylor, and Josh Martin, who we haven't mentioned that much so far this time round, but there's a long way to go. He starts in the top 5. There's no reason why he can't move a little bit further forward. Nathan Blank is about to cross the line. I think he may have actually crossed the line. No, he hasn't, has he? Not yet, no. And we'll just wait for him, because then we'll go to a very quick advert break and we'll see Eric Axel. In fact, I'm going to the advert break now. We'll speak to Eric Axelson after this.
Hello, guys.
First qualifying session complete then for the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Turbo Cup here at Laguna Seca, the Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, playing host to our first two 20-minute races of the season. And we have our first pole sitter, and it should not come as a huge surprise to any of you that first pole sitter of the season is the qualifying king himself, Eric Axelsen. Eric, you're picking up exactly where you left off in the touring cars, and you must be happy actually to be back in an MX5, because we were discussing this during qualifying. You went well in the MX5 last time we raced it, but these are a little bit different, aren't they?
Yeah, to be honest, I thrive in the MX5, and yeah, they handle quite the same. It's just quite a lot faster, and with the hybrid as well. So yeah, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, very different, and I'm intrigued to see how different the racing is, because we all know how close Mazda MX-5 racing is. The slipstream's very powerful, overtaking is not as hard as it is in some other cars, for example. How much of an effect do you think that hybrid will have? Do you think we'll see drivers using it more to attack, or perhaps to defend from other drivers who are in their slipstream?
I would say, as you say, there is a lot of slipstream in the MX5 as it is, and I think that with the hybrid, it's going to be so much overtaking. I think it's going to be really fun, really interesting.
Yeah, it certainly is. We're looking forward to watching it. You'll be starting them from the best place on pole position. How important is pole position, though, do you think, in the MX5 Cup? Because it's going to be hard to hold on to the lead, I think, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's going to be hard for sure. But I feel that Laguna Seca, it feels really good to be on pole, because it's a lot of tricky corners, and it's nice to have the opportunity to get out of traffic on the first lap.
That's a good point. Yes, there could be some trouble behind, I think, and you hopefully will be well clear of that. Eric, we'll let you go, but congratulations, you're on pole position. You're the championship leader, because you've scored the first point of the season as well for pole, and let's see how many more points you can pick up in race one.
Yeah, thank you, Andy.
Eric Axelsen then on pole position. We are just a couple of minutes away from getting our first 20-minute race of the night underway. And Jack, I am excited for this, because it really felt like over the course of the touring car season, we learned quite a lot about the hybrid system, about the different compound tyres. It almost feels like we're back to square one, though, now, doesn't it, Jack? Because these cars are a completely different animal. I think the style of racing we're about to see is something very unfamiliar, perhaps.
Well, the style of driving is very different as well, isn't it? From the front-wheel drive to the rear-wheel drive to the sort of very slidey rear-wheel drive, and that a Mazda MX-5 is as well. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And I think even use of the hybrid as well. In the touring cars, maybe you get away with activating it on the exit of a corner, trying to get a little bit of an extra sort of drive and deal with the understeer. If you activate it in the rear-wheel drive MX-5 that's already sliding out the corner, then all of a sudden your extra 100 Newton meters torque are going to be spinning up those rear wheels, and you could actually have a worse exit as well. And I think a lot of drivers going into qualifying at the late stages of their practice, they try and do a couple of laps without any hybrid, because that's what qualifying is going to be. So all of a sudden you're going into a race with the hybrid, with the slipstream, your braking zones are going to be slightly different. You're going to have to brake slightly earlier, otherwise you're going to completely miss your apex and completely miss your turning point. And all of a sudden you're banditing towards a gravel trap. So drivers are going to have to keep an eye out.
Very good point, that, actually, about the hybrid, and the fact these cars are rear-wheel drive, especially on cold tyres, will be very easy to spin those rear wheels, I think. So, yes, this will be interesting. Eric Axelsen then on the pole position, Kyle Felvis alongside him. Lots of different liveries for us now to get used to as well at the start of the season, so bear with us if we mix a couple of them up in the early stages. Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Nicky Taylor share the second row of the grid. Then Josh Martin and Ethan Hill on row 3, Joel Laskin, Nathan Blank row 4, Andy Carroll and Jens Verhoeven round out the top 10, ahead of Sam Zero and Alok Iyengar, the two new drivers sharing row 6. Reece Bell and Paul Laramie are on row 7, Kenny Press and John Jones on the 8th row, ahead of Simon Thorpe the back of the 17-car grid. Red lights then start to illuminate 20 minutes of racing to kick off the championship, and it gets underway now with a good start made by Axelsen. Pole position, Felvis immediately pulls in line behind him. Bit of jockeying for position going on behind, and already a couple of drivers at the front of the field jumping straight on that hybrid button. All of our top 3 using the hybrid power as they streak uphill and back over the other side into the braking zone at turn 2. Axelsen leads then, Felvis second, Josh Martin side by side with Dalton-Ayres and there's a bit of door banging already as they head for turn 3.
Josh Martin starting on from 5th position up to 3rd, though, is a fantastic start, isn't it? And even though he's having to fight everything to try and maintain that position, he's going to be held along the outside by Elliot Daltonez and then Nicky Taylor, looking extremely interested to try and take some kind of advantage. I actually thought they were going to go 3 wide through the double right-hander. Luckily, they didn't. They sorted themselves out, but they sorted themselves out in an order that sees Daltonez retake that 3rd, Josh Martin in 4th, then Joel Lask up the inside of a Nicky Taylor, who once looked like he might be actually attacking for 3rd. Well, now he's having to deal with 6th position as Joel Lask does initiate that hybrid system, but he washed wide, and there's a spinner in the background, which I think is one of our newcomers. Yep, Sam Zero. And in fact, they're both the newcomers, aren't they, as well? Linegar and Zero, and unfortunately Bell.
Yeah, Reese Bell caught up in that as well, so Sam Zero looking to try and carry on then from where he was. Ethan Hill were following down though towards the end of the lap, 7th place for him. Joel Lask directly ahead of him, so drama in the midfield. That was what Eric Axelson was worried about, wasn't it? That further down the order was not where you wanted to be, because there could be a little bit of early race drama. Someone running wide, that was Nathan Blank outbreaking himself. Jens Verhoeven's in the dirt as well. A very dramatic first lap. It looks like these cars are quite tricky to handle on cold tyres, perhaps. That is leading to a few little mistakes, just stringing the field out slightly through the middle of the pack, but up near the front, well, actually, it's stringing out at the front as well, because Eric Axelson's 1.5 seconds up the road already from Felder's 2nd, Daltonaire's 3rd, and here Ethan Hill has got Joel Lask to play with, and Joel Lask moving ahead of him into 6th place.
I think the point that you made about the cold tyres is certainly, coming to the floor, basically. I hadn't even thought about it, but the MX5 is particularly, it changes the dynamics of the car when they're on cold tyres. You start understeering, and then you start putting a boot full of power to try and correct the understeer, and then the rear wheels throw out on you. As Ethan Hill on the brakes is almost throwing his rear end out as well. As I think that was Joel Lask doing very, very well to be so aware that there was a driver coming up the inside and onto the apex. He managed to hold off the attack for the time being, but Ethan Hill showing that he's very much interested in taking that 6th place away from him.
Yes, he is. Up towards the top of the hill then they come, and towards the famous screw sequence of corners, and there, Jens Verhoeven off the road, I'm afraid. 13th place for him at the moment. He was running in 11th position, of course, before this off, and he is into the barriers, and going to take a little while to get going as well. I think Nicky Taylor there running in 5th position as he drops down the hill. Eric Axelson, by the way, is one of the only drivers I noticed on the soft tyres, Jack. So 3 different compounds of tyre. The medium seems the most popular right now, but this may well go some way towards explaining why Axelson is streaking away at the front.
Yeah, and potentially why he got such a good start, although I don't really think he got that much of a better start than Felvis and Daltonaire's. He could just turn it on a little bit quicker as Nicky Taylor looks to go around the outside of Josh Martin into turn 1. Josh wasn't having any of that, and that corner is always going to have the advantage of the way of the inside driver, because it's a very long double left-hander, and they can get onto the power nice and early and defend through the double right. Yeah, 2 of the drivers that are on the softs as well, John Jones and Simon Thorpe. Will be interesting to keep an eye on those 3 drivers' lap time. When do the mediums come into play? When do the softs drop off? It's like I'm watching a Dutch Grand Prix again.
It is a bit, isn't it? Yeah, you definitely do get this strategy playing out, and it will be different in the MX5 than it was in the TCR, that's for sure. Nathan Blank here trying to make up for that little error we saw from him at the end of the first lap. Streaks around the outside of Andy Carroll. That was a nice move, and that is a popular move to make in an MX5 because they're not the most powerful of cars. These, of course, more powerful than the standard one. Oh, dearie me. Nathan Blank with some very, very good car control there. Self-induced slide because he hit the curb too hard, but did at least manage to hang on to the move. Andy Carroll, though, I'm afraid, is heading for the barriers, and Andy Carroll gives the barriers a headbutt at the top of the corkscrew, and that immediately relieves the pressure from Nathan Blank. We're seeing a lot of mistakes here, though. These cars clearly are a handful, especially in the early stages. And the thing with the MX5 I found, from my personal experience, Jack, is that on cold tyres, they have so much less grip, but you don't have any downforce to counter that. So you want to throw the car into the corner because that is the fastest way to get these cars around the track, because they are momentum-based cars. You can't just rely on having hundreds and hundreds of brake horsepower to get you out of the corner. You need to carry the speed through the middle of the turn, and you just can't do that until you get the tyre temps up.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it while we came in and we're talking about the car, but I'm not 100% convinced that rear wing is really doing an awful lot. It just seems to be adding weight onto the rear axle, which in itself is already pretty slidey to start with. Yeah, we actually saw in the track guide that Lewis obviously put together for us just before we went into qualifying. I even mentioned it while we were watching it ourselves, is the fact that you're basically steering the car with your feet a lot of the time. We have a fantastic graphic now whenever you watch the hot laps, where you can sort of see the brake and the throttle tracer on the left-hand side. And if you go back and watch that, or watch it in a couple of weeks' time, you'll see that the throttle, Lewis puts it down, comes off it, puts it down, comes off it as well. And that is just to rotate the rear end of the car to try and get a potential sort of dig to make the front end dig in, make the rear end turn around so you can get on the power nice and clean afterwards. Nicky Taylor throwing everything at Josh Martin, but Josh at the moment seems impervious to it.
He does, doesn't he? Josh Martin, we know, can soak up the pressure and is running in 4th place at the moment, but they're losing touch with the leaders. Eric Axelson's 4 seconds up the road. He's unstoppable right now. Yes, he's on the soft tyres, but 4-second lead, after a handful of laps is extraordinary, especially in a car that is supposed to keep everyone bunched nicely together, as we're seeing from this group. 4th place Martin, 5th place Taylor, 6th place Lask, all nose to tail as they head up the hill over the top of the crest into the braking zone at 2, and Nicky Taylor tries to go around the outside of Josh Martin because Josh was defending the inside line. Now again, you can go around the outside in these cars, but Josh Martin with a little squirt of a throttle through the middle of the turn gets just in front of Nicky Taylor. He'll try and now carry his momentum around the outside at turn 3, but Nicky Taylor is going to bully him off the road. Little bit of contact there, 2 wheels in the dirt for Martin. Got Joel Lask trying to pick up the pieces from this as well, and it will be Taylor who goes 4th, Lask into 5th, and 2 places dropped by Martin.
Yeah, well, I think that's all fair. Oh, almost Lask going into the side of Martin. As I was about to say, it's all fair in love and war. But yeah, I think Martin gave a little bit to Taylor. Taylor gave a little bit to Martin. Now Lask is looking to give a bit to both of them. And 3 wide is never going to work through this left flick. You really need a good exit out of here. It's probably the most important corner on the entire track as they go up towards the corkscrew. Lask gets the lead and he has the momentum with leaving in his wake Taylor and Martin just to fight it out going into the braking zone. Has Martin outbroken himself? No, he hasn't. He's actually managed to slot in back behind Nicky Taylor, who finally gets the move done, but he sees himself still in 5th position. And
they're allowing Ethan Hill to catch them as well, so this is shortly going to become a 4-way fight for 4th position. Some seconds behind those ahead of them. Axelson leading by 6 seconds now over Felvis, who is over 3 ahead of Dalton Ayres. Whoops, bit of a headbutt there from Josh Martin onto the back of Nicky Taylor's car as they go through the tight left-hander at turn 11 and head back up over the stripe once again. 20-minute races now as well. I made mention of this before. We got used to 15-minute races over the last couple of championships that we've run. To the full 20 now, so we get a bit more racing action and a bit longer for the tyres to manage as well. Now these cars, on the face of it, Jack, won't use the tyres up too hard, but because you slide the cars around quite a lot, I wonder whether maybe some of those on the soft tyres, Eric Axelsson in particular, might start struggling with some tyres overheating by the end of the race. Right now though, Josh Martin has bigger fish to fry because he's got Ethan Hill up the inside and Josh does not want to lose another place.
Yep, and he's, under a lot of threat at the moment because Ethan Hill goes for the faker route and he goes up the inside, up the hill, and I don't believe Josh Martin has got an answer for that immediately. No, he doesn't. So yeah, to further your point on the tyre degradation, the way you drive these cars, like we mentioned before, you throw an awful lot of steering lock in to try and get the nose pointed. You then give it a boot full of power to rotate the rear end, and all that does is scrubbing front tyres. It's then spinning up the rear tyres, and if you drive it sort of dangerously, arguably, or not very considerately, shall we say, not much mechanical sympathy, those tyres will fall off a cliff. Haven't seen much of Eric Axelsson. I can't believe he's driving without mechanical sympathy because he's doing an absolutely stellar job. But what I can notice is the last lap, he started using a lot of his hybrid. He used 3 in 1 lap, but I don't believe he'd used really any before that in the previous couple of laps. Anyway, I think that's to get his fastest lap of the race done and dusted while he's still got tyres left underneath him, because the fastest lap of the race gives you 3 points still. It's a lot of points for a fastest lap. So, yeah, Eric Axelsson's trying to do a clean sweep here. Pole position, fastest lap, and a race win.
not usually a betting man, Jack, but I would put quite a lot of money on him getting the fastest lap because he's only 1.7 seconds faster than anyone else has managed so far. That's it's pretty tight, isn't it? That Eric Axelsson, just an absolute beast in these MX5s, and he is going to take some beating. But you know, perhaps the others will learn from this. Most of the other drivers opting to go safe with the medium tyre. Maybe Eric can prove that you can make the soft tyres last, and we'll see some of the other front runners going for the softs later on. We've also got a reversed grid coming up for race 2, so that will force Eric to do some overtaking as Sam Zero there and Reese Bell in the background both get a bit squirrely coming out of the right-hander there at turn 3. Following Andy Carroll, though, who's running in 12th place. John Jones just ahead of him, and John Jones ahead of Andy Carroll is not something we're that used to seeing. So John Jones perhaps starting to find his groove in these Mazdas.
Yeah, well, he's been around in the VRRC for long enough, and we've done a fair few Mazda MX5 championships, along with a lot of coaching sessions put on in previous sort of seasons. Maybe returning to these cars after doing the touring cars, maybe he has just found that he feels more at home in them. Ethan Hill, though, finding himself more at home in the gravel trap, unfortunately. He was ahead of Josh Martin. Now, it makes me think when we cut back to them that he ran a little bit wide before the corkscrew, and that's potentially why he was behind Martin. And he just ran a little bit wide there as well, unfortunately. Back to the battle with Andy Carroll, trying to put all the pressure on John Jones. John Jones, normally one of those drivers, Andy, that we see at the front end of the reverse grid race. And it's always a bit inevitable that they move backwards a little bit. But again, he's showing, like you've just mentioned, that maybe he's got a bit more about him this time round.
Yeah, absolutely. Gelling with the car, it seems, keeping Andy Carroll at bay. Although Carroll were using the hybrid there. I think he got on the hybrid a bit earlier. Just sweeps around the outside of Jones, who's also on the hybrid, but didn't seem to get quite the same run over the top of the hill. Hitting the brakes, though. John very late on the brakes. Too late, really. Sails off into the Andretti hairpin, but neither of them made friends with the apex. And so in the end, they come out of the corner with Andy Carroll still stuck behind. So John Jones defending there with some very late braking into turn 2. And manages to hang on to this 11th place. They've got Sam Zero closing back in as well after his early off. Speaking of early offs, Kenny Press and Alok Iyengar, unfortunately, both out of the race. They're both in the pit lane, and once you, as I said in qualifying, once you fast track back to the pit lane here at the VRRC, then that is your race done. So they'll finish at the back, and crucially, won't be involved in the reversed grid. So at the moment, Jens Verhoeven, as the last driver running, would find himself on pole for race 2.
These cars are extremely sturdy. I'd be slightly impressed if they've managed to write them off so bad that they can't drive them. But hey-ho, they've done and dusted. This move is almost done and dusted. Andy Carroll, and then John Jones just runs wide, trying to defend that position. Will have the second apex, and actually Andy Carroll gave him an entire postcode worth of room to play with there to try and let him back onto the apex. Very good sportsmanship. I'm not entirely sure it's the quickest way to actually take the position, though, in 11th place. They're getting a little bit closer to each other now, but Andy Carroll does run off wide now as Sam Zero goes through. We saw him have it off in the opening lap. So does Reese Bell. Well, we also saw having it off in the opening lap. Actually, he was in the same crash as Sam Zero from memory. So yeah, not ideal for them to be running in that position, but like Andy said, they do have a full reverse grid in about 7 minutes time to try and make up for any lost points that they can sort of salvage from that one. Nicky Taylor in 5th. We've got Joel Lask just ahead of him. Joel Lask, since he's got into this position, Andy, has been fairly firm, hasn't it? It's not like we've seen him drop like a stone. He actually raced to the front on fair merit, getting past Josh Martin and Nicky Taylor, and since he's got there, held them all off as well.
He has, but what he's not done is escaped, and this is kind of the problem with MX5s, isn't it? You get to the front of a group, and unless you've got a slipstream from the cars ahead, or you're Eric Axelsson, you're not going to break away from the group you've just overtaken. So that perhaps is what's going on here. Nicky Taylor at least able to latch onto the tail of Lask, and it's possible that they've been working together over the last couple of, because they have both been lapping quicker than Josh Martin and Ethan Hill behind. Nicky Taylor also saving some hybrid. Now, this might potentially be asking one of my pre-race questions here, Jack. Can you save hybrid by running in the slipstream? Joel Lask has no slipstream, therefore all of his straight line speed really is coming from the hybrid, whereas Nicky Taylor, who, as I make this point, uses the hybrid heading over the top of the hill, but he has been running behind and has a lot more hybrid left than Joel, so that slipstream perhaps is powerful enough that you can save that hybrid by running behind. Now that, I don't think will be too significant here, but when we get to places like Road America with lots of long straights, drivers could really use that tactically to save their hybrid for the final lap.
I tell you what will be very important when it comes to that sort of tactic as well, is having a spotter, having someone who will actually watch the stream and give that, communicate to the drivers how many hybrids everybody else around them has as well. So I can pretty much guarantee you that Nicky Taylor knows exactly that Joel Lask is running about half the hybrids that he's got. Therefore, he doesn't really need to panic. He can wait until the last couple of laps and then start to use 2 or 3 per lap to get past and then pull away as well. So that'll be crucial. And for drivers who are running solo, Josh Martin is one of them. He's running for Martin Racing. He's the only driver who's running for Martin Racing. He'll be slightly struggling potentially if he doesn't have anybody in his ear in Discord telling him all the information for the other drivers, because when you're actually in the car, in the simulator, you have no way of telling what everybody else has under the bonnet. So yeah, that's going to be crucial.
Yeah, it's very tactical racing in MX5s, and the drivers will need to, or want at least, to know as much information as they can. Something's happened to Andy Carroll, hasn't it? I know we saw him going off and forward to the back of this group, but he's about 3.5 seconds off the back of this group now, so I think he's had another whoopsie somewhere. So now it's Reese Bell's turn to pull up onto the rear bumper of John Jones and try and relieve him of this 11th place. Sam Zero still running behind him in 13th, and Jens Verhoeven recovering as well after his lap 1 shenanigans, down in 14th place right now. We've got just over 4 minutes to go. Eric Axelson is only 10 seconds up the road, so it's all still to play for this. Kyle Felvis in 2nd place, though he's being caught slowly, I think, at the moment by Elliot Toltenaires in 3rd position. And Joel Lask then, as we've seen, at the head of that interesting trio, Lask, Taylor and Martin, still scrapping over 4th place.
Yeah, Eric Axelson's actually channeling his inner Sergio Perez as well, because his last lap, even though he's on the softs, and in theory they should be going off and the medium should be being favoured at this point, the last lap by Eric Axelson was a full 0.8 of a second quicker than Kyle Felvis. Now, he might have used some hybrid, but he's still got an awful lot left, so I can't believe that he's used that many on that previous lap. Yeah, just absolutely astonishing speed and mechanical sympathy by Eric, and I think we'll be talking a lot about his skills in an MX5 over the course of the next 8 weeks as well. Going to be interesting to see how he conquers the 40-minute races as well. That's because, of course, reverse grids throw a little bit of uncertainty into the mix for Eric, but the full 40 minutes, that seems to be his style of racing anyway, so if anything, he's going to be stronger.
Yeah, very smooth driver, and he seems to look after the tyres pretty well. Although I will make quick mention of the fact that no one really is dropping off the pace. The medium tyres are still within a couple of tenths of everyone's best laps as well, so I think we'll see a lot more takers for the softs in race 2. Right now, though, we've got Nicky Taylor dicing away here with Josh Martin, and Josh Martin is taking 5th place from Nicky, who tries to dive straight back up the inside into the Andretti hairpin. They go door to door, not for the first time in this race. The green car on the outside, Josh Martin. The sort of gold white on the inside is Nicky Taylor, but the next 2 corners are right-handers. They will favour Martin, and Nicky Taylor's going to be hard pushed, I think, to hang tough around the outside, gets 2 wheels over the curb, and Martin goes through. And you can see there just how much time that little side-by-side exchange has cost them to Joel Lask ahead. He's broken to nearly a second away now, which will be getting close, I would imagine, to breaking the toe. He won't quite have done it yet, and certainly if Taylor and Taylor and Martin just work together a little bit over the next few corners, they should be able to close back in on Joel. But nice move there by Josh to get back into the top 5.
It was indeed, but I'm just wondering whether off camera there was a move from Nicky Taylor on Joel Lask, because once upon a time we were talking about those two and Martin was a good 1.5 seconds down the road. Well, now that's very much changed, hasn't it? And going into the corkscrew, Taylor struggling to get that car stopped without it spitting his rear end on him. He does manage it just about without getting into the back of Josh Martin, but he's certainly throwing everything at it, and I don't know whether it's really come off for him as Reese Bell tries to go around the outside. He's getting the move done as well on John Jones. Fair play to him. It's going to be a very quick left-hander, though. Flick it in and hope it sticks, and Reese Bell has it stuck.
Wow, that was brave. I was about to say that it's a brave man who will go round the outside at turn 6, but that's exactly what Reese did. So he's into 11th now, John Jones in 12th, and here comes Jens Verhoeven, steaming around the outside and around, almost, yes, off surely. He's going to go Reese Bell. He didn't quite catch it. That was a very sudden snap, as if maybe there was a helping hand from behind. If not, then he hit that curb too hard and lost control. So Reese Bell, whatever caused it, falls back down into 14th place again now, and just like that, it's Jens Verhoeven into 11th now, who capitalised on that to gain 2 places. Right, back to the 4th place squabble now. Lask, Martin and Taylor as I sort of thought might happen, have all got themselves back together again, and they are on what I think will be the penultimate lap of the race, because the leader, of course, is so far ahead of this lot that he'll probably get another lap in at the end of this one. Nicky Taylor needs all the laps that he can, because he's trying to get back into the top 5, and he can still see Joel Last not that far ahead. This battle's going to rage right down to the wire.
It is indeed, yeah. There's a lot of speed taken by Nicky there, and there's a bit of speed up lag on my end. In fact, he's pushing Martin all the way up towards the corkscrew. Tried to just maybe push him towards Joel Last. Says, you can attack him, I'll attack you in a second, because of course if Nicky gets a bit of a run, he could get 2 in 1 if those two start fighting ahead of him. But obviously that's a bit of a pipe dream for the time being, because Josh Martin's not quite close enough to Joel Last. However, one driver we can focus on though is Eric Axelsson, and well, we've sung his plaudits quite a lot after his qualifying gambits. I was actually going to say he's getting used to these pole position interviews by now, Andy. He feels a lot more comfortable having a chat to us.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's spent enough time talking to us. I'm running out of questions for him, quite frankly, and there's not a lot to ask him about this race because he held the lead at the start and then absolutely disappeared up the road. So a very easy race for him. Oh my word, that was Nicky Taylor arriving at about 30 miles an hour too fast into the first corner, somehow kept it on the road, and he might even convert it into an overtake because Josh Martin's gone past Joel Last, and Nicky Taylor goes on the inside as well. I'm not convinced that is the fastest line around the Andretti hairpin, but Taylor made it work somehow.
Yeah, maybe that's where you're going wrong, Andy. Maybe maybe the high, wide, and handsome route is exactly. This is NASCAR country after all, isn't it?
True.
So, yes, no, but I think it's because Joel Last didn't quite have the hybrid left, whereas Nicky Taylor and Josh Martin did. Nicky's used all of his, so is Josh Martin, and Nicky with a lovely cutback gets that 4th place, but they're pretty much line astern going up towards the corkscrew. There'll be a fast left-hander. Nicky a little bit narrower going through that apex. He instantly moves over to try and cover off that inside. What can Joel Last do on Josh Martin here? Is he going to have a pop? Is he going to leave him to try and attack Nicky? No, he's going to have a pop. Josh Martin goes a little bit wide. The first apex is Joel's. The second apex, though, is Josh Martin. As Joel Last goes a little bit wide, that might be the end of his battle for 4th place, but Nicky and Josh still fighting away to upper front.
This race is still going on, and Eric Axelsson is already here for his winner's interview because he has crossed the line to take the win. 10.5 seconds up the road he was at the end of that race. Kyle Felvers second, Milton Ayres in third. Nicky Taylor in 4th position. I think he's going to try and hang on to the line here with Josh Martin and Joel Last right behind him, but it will be Taylor. A fighting drive there from Nicky Taylor to get 4th at the end. Josh Martin 5th and Joel Last 6th. Taylor gaining 2 places there on the final lap. Ethan Hill comes home in 7th ahead of Nathan Blank in 8th. Simon Thorpe should be 9th, I think, and then rounding out the top 10 will be Paul Laramie, or will it? Because Jens Verhoeven has actually caught Paul Laramie on these final couple of laps, and I think Jens might be shaping up for a move to get into the top 10. Here he comes down to the last corner. One more opportunity to do it. Is he going to send it to the inside? He thought about it, but there just wasn't quite the space. Oh, but then sideways off the corner for Laramie, and that opens the door in the end anyway for Jens Verhoeven to get 10th place on the final corner. Brilliant battle that between the two of them, with Verhoeven taking 10th, Laramie in 11th, and then we wait for the rest to come through. Reece Bell in 12th, John Jones 13th, Sam Zero is in the pit lane, so I think that John Jones will be the last car across the line. Right, lots to talk about after that first race of the night. We'll be unpacking it all with our podium finishers on the other side of this break. So the first race in the books then for the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Turbo Cup here at Laguna Seca, and a dominant victory for Eric Axelsen from pole position means that he is our early championship leader, and he joins us now in the commentary box to discuss what was, Eric, probably not your hardest race, let's be completely honest. You got the track position from qualifying, which you said you were happy about, nailed the start, and then I don't think we saw you again until the end.
I guess that sums it up. I was on a different strategy than everybody else, and it worked out.
Yeah, you were on the strategy that saw you go about 1.8 seconds a lap faster than them. I think the others need to try and copy you there. You were one of the only drivers, certainly the only front-running driver, on the soft tyres. Were you surprised that no one else felt confident to use those soft tyres?
Well, yeah. Actually, I was. I thought a few was gonna, chance of taking the softs. The grip level is far from very good at the end, but it still worked out.
Yeah, your pace at the end was fantastic, that's for sure. And now you've got to do it all from the back of the grid. Are you excited about this?
Yeah, it's going to be really good. Good fun.
Excellent stuff. We'll look forward to watching you. And if you win this one, we're going to confiscate your soft tyres for the rest of the season, just to forewarn you. Congratulations, Eric. Well done.
Thank you.
Eric Axelsen, then race winner, and the runner-up is about to catch up with Jack.
Yeah, congratulations, Kyle, on the second place. It looked like at the end there, Elliot was giving you a little bit of almost a push. Were you keeping an eye on the time?
No, I think I was just saving my push passes. I sort of just chilling. I knew I could already run away, and sort of had confidence that I was going to stay ahead of Elliot.
Well, fair enough. I'm going to ask you a tyre-based question now. Have you decided to change your mind from the mediums to the softs potentially for this one?
It's a difficult choice. I'm still debating it at this moment, so I'm not sure.
Well, you've got 2 minutes to decide. We'll let you concentrate. Congratulations on the second place. We'll see if we have a chat to you afterwards.
Thanks, Jack.
Tell you what, Kyle has definitely got a career as a professional racing driver ahead of him, because he wasn't letting any of us in on his strategy secrets there. Third place for Elliot Daltonaires, and again, a solid start to the season for you there, Elliot. Some good points in the bag.
Quite a good solid race for me. I mean, the race start was a bit sketchy. Josh managed to get up the inside, but I did the cut back and kind of just left that pack for dead, to be honest.
And that's so important in MX5 racing, isn't it? If you can break away from a pack, especially a pack of drivers as quick as those, then they find it hard to catch you back up again.
Yeah, I was more worried about kind of getting caught up and then getting a tag, and that would spin me and kind of ruin my race.
Yeah, thankfully that didn't happen, although you've now got to duck and dodge your way through the reverse grid shenanigans. Do you enjoy these reverse grid races, or are they just a bit stressful?
Quite stressful. I mean, the first lap is always very cautious, obviously. People going for it, but I might just hang back, see what happens, and then go for it.
I think that might well be a winning strategy, Elliot. So congratulations on the podium. Best of luck for race 2.
Thank you.
There you go then, our first set of very happy, very calm, very relaxed podium finishes there, Jack. You can tell that they had the easier race there. I think if we were chatting to the likes of Nicky Taylor, for example, and Joel Lask after that race, they might be a little bit more out of breath.
I was going to say they sounded very calm because it was a very dull drive for them, I imagine. Although it's weird to say, isn't it? Because getting a podium sounds like it would never be dull. But for those drivers, they've had plenty of them in the VRRC community as of late. And obviously, if they're not really overtaking or anything like that, it's basically a practice session for them. But hopefully, they've learned a few things and that they'll go into this second race starting from the back. They'll probably be a bit more out of breath by the end of this one.
As will we, I suspect. Yeah. A full reverse grid then, apart from those who were non-finishers. So we see still at the back of the grid the likes of Sam Zero, Kenny Press, Alec Iyengar, and Lewis Edwards isn't at the back of the grid because he's broadcasting. So we have 16 starters for this race. John Jones on pole position, Reece Bell alongside him with Paul Laramie and Jens Verhoeven row 2. Then it's Simon Thorpe and Nathan Blank with Ethan Hill and Joel Lask on the 4th row. Josh Martin on row 5 with Nicky Taylor. They're 2 to watch for here for sure. Ahead of Daltonaires, Felvers and Axelsen, our race 1 podium finishers, all starting outside of the top 10 for our second round of the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Cup. The lights go on, the lights go out. now, and we are away and racing. Bit of wheel spin there from John Jones, but he gets off the line well. Immediately the top four use the hybrid to try and establish themselves at the front of the pack on the run over the hill through the flat out turn one and onto the brakes into the Andretti hairpin. To the outside there goes the zebra liveried car of Reese Bell. Seems to pick a different safari animal to inspire his livery for every one of these championships, but he is out wide and ends up getting overtaken by Jens Verhoeven, who's into second place. There's a spinner further back. That's Simon Thorpe pointing the wrong way, and he will go right to the back of the pack. Jones then leads the way, but Verhoeven is alongside him heading into turn 4 and will sweep through into the lead. Jens Verhoeven then leads from John Jones and Reese Bell.
Yeah, Verhoeven absolutely flying as Nathan Blank is not going anywhere. Neither is Elliot Dalton-Ayres, Kenny Press,
Lask as well.
Joel Lask. Is that Joel Lask as well? Oh dear me, that's not and Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who I think we just mentioned. Sorry, yeah, a few very sort of big names. We got under safety car there to try and digest what we've just seen. Very quickly though, to focus on the front, Jens Verhoeven absolutely flying, wasn't he, through the opening couple of corners there, Andy? Absolutely nothing stopping him, and his car is crispy clean as well. There's no contact.
Car as well, nice and bright, which is always a friend to a commentator, is a bright racing car. Yeah, the last thing that he wanted though was a safety car, because he was on it. He clearly had some confidence there, even though he's on the medium tyres as well. John Jones on the softs, so is Paul Laramie. Kyle Felvers did go for the softs in the end alongside Eric Axelson. Also Alec Iyengar, Simon Thorpe and Elliot Dalton-Ayres were on the softs. So too Kenny Press. So more of a 50-50 split this time, but yeah, Verhoeven, despite the fact he was on those medium tyres, seemed to have a lot more confidence and a lot more grip, or at least confidence in the grip that he had, compared to those around him. So Verhoeven then was able to lead, and what he didn't want really was for the rest of the pack to get bunched up behind him with a safety car. We're going to have another lap behind the virtual safety car before we get racing back underway, and it means that everyone else starts to close in behind him. Verhoeven then leads the first lap, Jones second, Reese Bell third, Paul Laramie fourth, Nicky Taylor fifth, Kyle Felvers sixth, Axelson's already seventh, ahead of Sam Zero, Ethan Hill and Josh Martin to round out the top 10.
Yeah, Carl Felvers actually had a slightly better start than Axelson in the end, didn't he? Carl Felvers actually about the same, actually, thinking about it, because reverse grid, that meant Carl would have started ahead of him. So, yeah, my apologies, got that completely wrong in my head. You can tell I've done this before. But, yeah, it's what I'm quite impressed with, though, and what I'm quite curious on, I suppose, probably more than anything, is, one, how a driver's gone off on the outside, Paul Laramie, whilst under safety car conditions, and two, how well those soft tyres really holds up for everybody else. We saw that Eric Axelson, in fact, we heard him as well, say that they're a little bit slippery as they come towards the end of the race. Is it just that he is impervious to cars slipping around him and that he's just able to absorb that and is just not bothered by it at all and he can keep the pace going? Or is it the fact that sort of the car is actually just, you know, really not that bothered by the tyres whatsoever, and the car feels exactly the same at the beginning as it does to the end? We'll have to wait and see, and amongst the likes of Carl Felvers, John Jones, Paul Laramie, like you mentioned, whether they drop off massively.
Yes, what has dropped off is the virtual safety car, because, of course, it is a virtual safety car. Oh, no, they're weaving again now. I thought they were actually back to... Yeah, okay, so the leaders have disappeared, and this lot look, well, we've got Alec Iyengar pointing backwards as well, so it did look an awful lot like we were racing, but no, you're right, they have packed back up again now for, I think, the restart this time coming across the line. So, yeah, you're right, though, this safety car will help them all with tyre management, but it will be interesting to see whether, for example, John Jones or perhaps looking at people like Carl Felvers, whether they can look after the tyres in the same sort of way that Axelson did in race 1. Right then, back across the line we go. I think we are now back up to racing speed, and John Jones on the hybrid trying to come back again to Verhoeven. That hybrid is powerful, so is the slipstream, and he's got the inside line through turn 1, down into the Andretti hairpin they go. Very late on the brakes for both of them. Neither of them are going to make the corner. There's a bit of paint traded, and John Jones in a feisty move here this evening gets the lead back. Verhoeven second, and off in the background, that's one of the HFT drivers. It's Taylor. Nicky Taylor off in the dirt. I don't think he quite made the barriers. The leader's sideways as well. John Jones around, collected by Verhoeven, and Kyle Felvers comes through all of the drama with the race lead.
I think Kyle Felvers is going to be a little bit more out of breath, and probably glad that he went on the soft tyres at his early stages, because he's taken advantage of what was some pretty big mistakes by the looks of it. Up the inside from 4th place on Reese Bell goes, Ethan Hill goes Eric Axelson. He's now into the podium positions, I assume anyway, because he's going to go through the left-hand side. And he's on the inside. Yeah, there we go. So Ethan Hill has to now settle back down to 4th place. Will he answer back into the corkscrew? That's the question on everybody's lips, probably including Paul Laramie. Laramie now having a lot of pressure from a reigning touring car champion in Eric Axelson. Eric not going for the move just yet, though. And all this is allowing Carl Felvers to get away. He's only been in the lead for half a lap, Andy, but he's already got a 2.5-second gap between himself and now the man who's going to be chasing him down, Eric Axelsen.
Well, exactly. He's going to need every bit of that 2.7 seconds that he's built up, 2.8 seconds actually, as they come towards the last corner, because he knows that Axelsen will be after him and probably has the pace to catch him. Ethan Hill there around the outside of Paul Laramie. That's the third place at the final corner. Reese Bell getting elbowed out wide as well, as there's a bit of a train forming on the inside of him. Josh Martin there being shoved up the hill by Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who was backwards halfway around the first lap and has just moved into 7th place.
Yeah, and as they go into the first corner, there's a couple of lockups and a couple of people wide as well, going for the high, wide and handsome route, but it hasn't worked so well this time for Reese Bell, unfortunately, who loses out that position on Elliot Dalton-Ayres, like you just mentioned before. Josh Martin doing quite well as he's on the medium tyre, so he's stuck with his guns. Elliot and Joel Lask are two drivers that he was fighting with momentarily in terms of Elliot Dalton-Ayres in the first race, but very much so race long for Joel Lask. And as they go side by side, Elliot gets that move done. Reese Bell goes off the track in the background. Must have been a little bit of contact. Everybody else does quite well to avoid. I'm not sure who that was swerving out the way, but did particularly well. It might have been Simon Thorpe, actually, who just had to jink out to the left-hand side to make sure he didn't make any contact as they went through and into that braking zone. But Josh Martin currently in 7th place after being overtaken by Elliot, who's on an absolute mission now with Joel Lask having his mirrors filled to the brim with that bright red car.
Yes, he is. There's a lot of red in this battle. I think some of the drivers seeing red as well, perhaps. Dalton-Ayres charging back after that early mishap that he had. And as you say, he's right on the tail of Joel Lask, who he knows is another quick driver. So the quicker he can get on past Lask, or the first opportunity he has to do that, he will want to take it, especially while Joel is sort of being bottled in a bit behind Paul Laramie, who is not slow, but I don't think has quite the same raw pace as the two around him. And that's contact, and this is going to be perfect for Dalton-Ayres. Look at that. Driver's eye view of the seas parting for him. Contact between Lask and Laramie. Laramie has spun down to the back of the top 10. Lask is hung out to dry, and it's Dalton-Ayres. He benefits and goes forward. Then there's more contact between Josh Martin and Joel Lask heading over the hill. That first race, Jack, it struck me how clean everyone was, how much space they were all leaving each other, because I think it was the first day back of school. Now we're into race 2, though. That has all gone well and truly out the window.
Yeah, PE kits are being forgotten. Food tech is just not existent anymore. Everybody has just gone AWOL, haven't they, really? It's very entertaining, though, from our perspective. But this is what reverse grid races really do fry up for us, isn't it? It's what we come to expect. It's why we put them on. And as Joel Lask looks up the inside of Josh Martin, I think those two drivers are going to be pretty much side by side for the entirety of this season. I'm very curious to see who's going to come out on top. Race leader, once upon a time, Jens Verhoeven has joined up to the back of these drivers, though. And considering Jens Verhoeven was facing the wrong way about 4 laps into this race after the safety car restart, he's done pretty well to get it back within a shout of top 5.
Well, I think the list of drivers who haven't been off the track in this race is quite a bit shorter than the list of those who have. But yeah, you're right. Verhoeven nicely up into 7th place. There's Alec Iyengar, who's had more than his fair share of off-track excursions tonight, but he's having a nice battle now with John Jones, who's also been off the road. Paul Laramie behind them. Guess what? He's had a spin too and has dropped down into 12th place after that moment at the final corner. The lead gap, though, Jack, interestingly, is not coming down as much as I thought. It did come down by 0.3 that time, but the lap before, Felvers matched Axelsen, and Eric is using a lot more hybrid. So Kyle Felvers using those soft tyres, that was absolutely the way to go.
It absolutely was. I'm going to take credit because I suggested it in the interview. So when Kyle comes back in, which I'm sure he will, because, well, unless he obviously throws it off or anything like that, then I am absolutely going to take credit for that, and I'll be insulted if he doesn't give it to me. Alok Iyengar, though, being overtaken, unfortunately, by Paul Laramie, although rather handy behind the wheel of a F1000, it doesn't seem like the MX5s on the sim are quite up to his sort of scratch at the moment as contact sees Paul Laramie going off the circuit.
We're all happy to have Alok on the grid. I don't think Paul Laramie is going to be all that impressed that Alok is racing with, because that was a little bit rude coming out of the Andretti hairpin. A bit of a hip and shoulder there from the 11th placed driver, the number 50 car, and poor old Paul Laramie is having a bit of a race to forget. Right, this is a much better race because at the moment it's clean between Ethan Hill and Elliot Dalton-Ayres. It's for 3rd position. They may be 6 seconds behind the cars ahead, but they're having an almighty tussle here for the final step on the podium, and the blue car of Ethan Hill just hanging on now now from Dalton Ayres, who I think is a little bit quicker, certainly given the rate at which he's pulled through the field. He's also on the softer tyre. We're just about to hit half race distance now as well. So if the tyres are going to start going off, as Axelsen was sort of suggesting they did in race 1, then this is perhaps when the drivers will start to feel it. But Dalton Ayres pushing hard, and Kyle Felver as well, briefly there, taking the fastest lap. Axelsen was fractionally quicker than him, but at the moment the soft tyres seem to be lasting well.
Dalton Ayres up the inside of Ethan Hill. We could see this move that's been brewing for quite some time on our screens just be executed to perfection. Going into the first couple of corners, Ethan Hill's trying to get that switch back. He's going to have the room. He has the room. Oh, he's made room for himself. Let's put it that way. As he sees Elliot Dalton Ayres just cut a little bit of grass on the right-hand side, or sand, I should say, around here at Laguna Seca. They're still door banging as they go through the double right-hander. Whose advantage is it going to be? Well, Elliot Dalton Ayres, who was on the hybrid going through the right-hander, has had to just sort of give it up for the time being, I think. And interesting place to use the hybrid. I don't know whether that was a slip of the finger or something, Andy, there, but going through some braking zones is not always the most efficient place to be using it. Joel Last just behind is now on the hybrid button though, trying to catch up to the two in front as he sees them battling away.
Indeed, yes, robust driving there between the two of them, but a nice move, as you said, by Ethan Hill, using the hybrid in a slightly different place, and the hybrid is powerful enough that if you can use it at a part of the circuit where your opponent isn't, then it can allow you to blast past them. Simon Thorpe here, looking up the inside of John Jones for 10th place. That was a very dodgy place to try the move, and these, I'll tell you what I'm noticing here, Jack, is these cars don't like the curbs, do they? I know that is a particularly vicious curb there, going through the turn 6 left-hander, but they really seem to get unsettled by them, and that's another thing the drivers will be learning tonight that may well become a factor later on. And finally it happens. We have proper contact between Ethan Hill and Elliot Dalton Ayres, and Dalton Ayres I think is going to redress that situation. Actually, he had the run. They're both on the hybrid though, and they're both being caught by Joel Lasker and Josh Martin, so the four are pretty much as one as they head for the first corner, and Ethan Hill is still somehow in third.
I'm pretty sure Elliot Dalton Ayres did come off the throttle to allow Ethan just to get ahead, but only just. So there was an opportunity into turn 1 to try and make the move, but he didn't actually manage to make it stick. What is allowed, like you just mentioned, is Joel Lask and Josh Martin to get involved. We know how feisty these two drivers are. Elliot, who obviously was in third place by the end of race number 1, we didn't really see much of him at all. But Joel Lask and Josh Martin, and then Nicky Taylor, who's a long way back, but he's there, were well in the fight for 4th place. And I'm sure Dalton Ayres and Ethan Hill, they'll be desperate to hold on, well, Ethan Hill especially, desperate to hold on for that third, because let's face it, I don't think he's quite got the pace, but he's got 7.5 minutes. He's fought off Elliot Dalton Ayres for this long. As I go into the corkscrew, I thought maybe there was going to be an opportunity for Elliot up the inside, but not quite yet. But yeah, 7.5 minutes is a long time to hold on to this one.
It is, but I've seen it done. You don't always have to be the fastest car on track to stay ahead, especially when you've got a group behind you like this. You can sort of play them off against each other. Last, Martin and Taylor are all pretty evenly matched, and see, with every lunge that Dalton Ayres tries like that, it delays him and it puts him under more pressure from Joel Lask. So what Ethan Hill wants to see right now, well, is exactly that. Joel Lask on the inside of Dalton Ayres. Those two now start tripping over each other. You know that Josh Martin's going to buy into that too if he gets half an opportunity, and suddenly Ethan Hill just gets a couple of moments of a break here as he breaks away now from the side-by-side pair behind. Joel Lasker is going to go through into 4th position, and Dalton Ayres drops down into 5th. But that was a good example there of how, as long as you do stand your ground and you do it cleanly, you can sort of back the pack up behind you and you can make your escape.
Yeah, we see it plenty of times in motorsport, don't we? How drivers sort of play the field a little bit like that and almost ask for help without actively asking for help for the drivers behind, even if they're not actually part of the same team. And Ethan Hill doing it to perfection there as Elliot. Seeing another place slip away from him is getting a little bit more frustrated now. It went his way early on. Oh, there's more contact, wheel to wheel, almost going on 2 wheels for both the drivers. But he carved through the field so efficiently in the early stages of this race. He just seems to have been caught somewhat. Ethan Hill is pulling away now. Josh Martin is probably just holding his ground for the time being and seeing what on earth erupts in front of him, because there's no point in him making any kind of move just yet. With nearly 6 minutes to go, he can see if this one ends in a big crash, and then he'll have the 2 places for free.
Yeah, absolutely. This is perfect for Ethan Hill, though. We didn't really see this in the touring cars. In the touring cars, if you were quicker, you were probably going to get past someone, and then you could probably catch the next person as well. But MX5s, you're so reliant on what the other drivers around you are doing. That has such a direct bearing on your pace. that you really need to work with people or get them to work against each other, and they're continuing to do that because Dalton Ayres this time tries to repay the favour by flinging it up the inside of Lask into the final corner, and again they are wheel to wheel coming out of that last corner. Now, dare we drag our eyes off this very entertaining battle, but we've got another entertaining battle about to erupt for the race lead, because Eric Axelsen is now within a second of Kyle Felvers. There you can see them look. I didn't want to have to drag away from that battle, but this is where the lead could change. But, Jack, Axelsen has used all but 5 of his hybrids. Felvers still has 11 left, so Kyle Felvers, I really think, is just managing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Eric Axelsen has got the fastest lap of the race at the moment. He's also doing some fast laps, even currently, even with those softs being degraded, I'm not sure that's the word, degrading their way down. And but Kyle Felvers, he'll be on the same tyres, but because he hasn't used that hybrid, he can just use the hybrid to defend if he needs to, and the likelihood is he will need to, because Eric will be in that slipstream area sort of now, and probably with about 3 minutes to go, maybe about halfway through the next lap, we'll see there will be a fight. But I think if Kyle just makes sure that he hits his apexes and then uses the hybrid efficiently into the major overtaking opportunities, there's no real reason why he needs to panic. He did all the hard work early on, especially after that safety car, and since then he's basically been chilling. You can see him now, he's using the hybrid, but he's going off trying to break that slipstream a little bit, trying to keep this gap for as long as possible.
Yeah, but that's the first time in laps that he's used the hybrid, so he's waited for Axelsen to get within a second and then started to use it to defend. So again, we're getting more answers to some of the questions we were posing pre-race as to whether you'll use the hybrid to attack or defend or both. Axelsen is closing though, and of course, as we've said, because we're in MX5s, you can overtake without the hybrid, so as long as he can stay in the slipstream here, maybe force Kyle to use a few more of his extra hybrid boosts. That's not the way to do it though, Eric. A rare mistake there as he ran wide out of turn number 4, but managed to catch it, thankfully, and Axelsen just drops a couple of car lengths. But yeah, if he can stay in the wheel tracks of Kyle Felvers, you can see Kyle is now starting to use the hybrid a bit more, and eventually they'll end up at a point where they're pretty much equal on the hybrid, and then it's a straight fight, and I really don't know which way that would go. They're 19 seconds up on Ethan Hill in 3rd place, Dalton Ayres still 4th, with Josh Martin 5th, Joel Lask 6th, and Nicky Taylor in 7th place, still trying to catch them.
Yeah, the only thing that I can see going Eric's way, not Kyle's, or probably going against Kyle, I might say, is the fact that he hasn't been using this hybrid at all this race, and he's been putting in some good lap times. Effectively, what I'm saying is he's in a rhythm. He's in a good rhythm. He knows his braking points, he knows his turn-ins, everything like that. And then all of a sudden, you're going to have to start using that hybrid. He'll get into the corner about, I don't know, well, with 50 extra horsepower under his bonnets, and, get about 5 miles an hour quicker into each corner. That alters the brake zones. That alters your turn-in points, and that could really go against Kyle Felvers. This is Elliot Dalton Ayres trying to put even more pressure on Ethan Hill, as if he hasn't already tried this for long enough so far this race. With 2.5 minutes to go, he's still there. He's still biting the back heels of Ethan.
Yeah, the difference now, though, is that he's shaken off Martin and Lask. They're about 2 seconds behind, so Elliot doesn't have any pressure from behind. It will be a bit harder now, I think, for Ethan Hill to defend from this. Elliot's only got 1 more hybrid use left, though, and we've still got 2 laps to go in this race, I think. At least 2 laps to go. Out wide goes Ethan Hill there through the Andretti hairpin, but he hooks up the second apex, gets off the corner well, and Elliot Dalton Ayres is getting a masterclass, actually, here in defensive driving from Ethan, who I'm convinced is not quite as quick as Elliot, but he's just placing the car in all the right positions, managing to hang on to the place for the time being. The lead battle staying as it was, so we'll focus on this for the time being then as Elliot gets alongside Ethan Hill, heading up into the left-hander then through turn 5, this slightly cambered left-hander, so you can carry a bit more speed in there than you think, especially through the second part of it. Not enough for Elliot Dalton Ayres to get alongside for the time being, and Josh Martin, having now broken away from Joel Lask, will be trying over the last lap or so to close back in on these two.
Yeah, it's going to be a potential look at the inside, look at how much Ethan Hill is determined to defend that inside line going into the corkscrew. And he just, every single lap, he seems to be able to just make the apexes stick. Doesn't matter how hard he has to brake, doesn't matter how narrow his entry is. He's able to get to the apex. He's able to get the car stopped as well and hold up Elliot Dalton Ayres just behind him. Eric Axelsen throwing everything at Kyle Felvers. There's only 0.2 of a second now between the top two, but we're going to have a look at Elliot going up the inside, and Ethan Hill finally made one tiny mistake. He's going for the cutback, but that tiny mistake on the exit of the penultimate corner may have given Elliot Dalton-Ayres the opportunity that he needs. As we cross the line, this will be the final lap of the race. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, he's in third place for the time being. Ethan Hill slots his way back up the timing tower, up the inside through the Andretti hairpin.
Nice.
It's still Ethan Hill.
Wow, that was seriously impressive there to come back from that. I thought he'd lost the place, but he gets it back. Oh, Joel Lasker's lost control through the hairpin and rejoins via the pit exit. So Nicky Taylor now inherits 6th position. But yeah, really feisty driving that from Ethan Hill and squeaky clean as well. Josh Martin, though, has taken nearly a second out of them in less than a lap because of that battling. So he could yet become a factor with now just over half a lap to go. The leaders are getting closer together as well now. The time about to tick down to 0. So we are on the final lap. And Eric Axelsen is now within a few tenths of Carl Felvers. Felvers has used 9 hybrids over the last 3 laps of the race, so he knows he's under pressure here, but I think the race might just end about a lap too soon here for Eric to really do anything about it. Down to the last corner we go, into the braking zone at turn 11, and Eric Axelsen's going to come up just short by 1 position of the perfect score tonight. He's had a race win from pole and a fastest lap in race 1, fastest lap in race 2 as well, but it's not the race win because Kyle Felvers fends him off, and he will win round number 2 of the championship. Eric Axelsen second, and now we focus on the battle for third as it turns through the penultimate corner. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, we know that he likes this move up the inside into the last corner. He's looking to the inside, but Ethan Hill knew it was coming, pulls over to defend, forces Dalton-Ayres to take the long way around, maybe get the switch back, and Josh Martin's there with them as well. A drag race to the line, get the photo finish camera ready, almost leaning on each other, but it will be Ethan Hill, I think, just by a nose, who hangs on to third place. Dalton-Ayres 4th, Josh Martin in 5th, and Nicky Taylor comes home in 6th after a fantastic battle there, Jack.
I think we're going to have a very excited Ethan Hill coming into the commentary box to have a little bit of a chat to us in a couple of minutes' time. Well, he's already in the commentary box, actually, aren't they? But we're going to just go through the rest of the order, give them a chance to compose themselves just a touch as well. But yeah, Eric Axelsen, in the end, only dropped 3 points this entire evening because he got that fastest lap of the race in that particular race as well. He got pole position, he got fastest lap in race number 1, and obviously the race victory. But Carl Felvers there keeping him honest as well, and it was almost a great battle towards the end, but Carl Felvers just had enough to take home that race victory, and very well done indeed.
Yeah, perfectly managed and perfectly measured race that, I think, from Kyle, and he joins us now in the commentary box then after holding on just about to the race win. That was a really interesting race, actually, to watch, Kyle, because you made the break early on. You got to the front, pulled a nice gap. I think you were over 3 seconds clear of Eric at one point. And then Eric started to close in on you fairly rapidly, but using a lot more hybrid. You seem to be deliberately saving that hybrid, knowing that you might well need it at the end.
Yeah, I was adamant that I was keeping 11 until 5 minutes left, and that's what I did.
Ah, right. So that was the specific number you had in mind. And then we saw, I think on one lap, you used it 5 times maybe, and it was just enough to hang on. Was there ever a moment, though, where you were concerned that he might have a go at you?
Well, I didn't know how many Eric had, so that was always a worry, but I knew if I kept 11, you start with 15, 11's a lot to keep, so I was hoping he didn't have that.
How happy are you to be back in a rear-wheel drive sports car now? Because you've improved a lot in the front-wheel drive tin tops, I have to say. You were very competitive in the touring cars, but this is very much where you feel more at home, isn't it?
Oh yeah, of course, this car is just how a car should be. The slidiness and all of the oversteer and everything, it's just how I think a car should be.
That being said, then, we've got to be talking about Kyle Felvers, championship contender, surely, this season. This is a good way to start. What do you think, though? Eric's going to be a tough one to beat, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, well, like you saw from tonight, tyres are going to be a big thing. Depends which tyre compound you go on, because I went on softs that time and Eric didn't run away with it as such.
Speaking of that, Jack Oliphant has told me that he wants at least 50% of the credit for your victory there, because he did drop the suggestion in about the soft tyres earlier on. So as impressed as we are with you, Carl, it was mainly down to Jack, that win, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I had the idea in my head of softs, but yes, thank you, Jack.
Damn right, I'm taking 50%.
Nicely done, Carl. Congratulations on the win, mate.
Thank you.
So Kyle Felbers then gets the race victory, and he knew what he was doing all along there, Jack.
Well, I'm glad he did. Another driver that that actually probably knew what he was doing all along. Unfortunately, couldn't quite get to the end though and get that race victory. But it's still probably a pretty happy man. Is Eric Axelson? Eric, I don't normally get to chat to you because normally Andy does the pole position and the race winners. But it's delightful to have you along. Congratulations on the second place.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah, feels good. I got a little left behind the car there in the traffic after the safety car, but yeah, tried to catch him, but he was really fast, really fast. So yeah.
You threw everything at him right at the end, though, there, didn't you? I mean, you were putting in some very, very quick times, even though you didn't have that many hybrids left. Was it just something that as soon as you saw the back of Kyle's car, it sort of flicked a switch in you and you just started driving better?
Yeah, well, maybe I probably used a lot more hybrids than he did. So, but of course, but then in the end, I think I overdrive the car a little. So yeah, I wasn't able to catch him, but it was close.
How was it getting through the field? Because obviously that was a bit of a different experience than your race one, wasn't it? Where you sort of just led from the front and didn't have any problems or anything like that. How was that race sort of carving through?
Well, yeah, it was. You had to be on your toes because it was happening a lot. Be ready to brake whenever, and then a safety car, and it was 2 laps also. So, yeah, it's a bit of a lottery when starting from the back of the grid, but it was fun.
Do you sort of begrudge that safety car, do you think, if you had those extra 2 laps and there's an opportunity potentially to take that race victory?
Man, I'm not sure. Kyle was so fast and he was also smart having those hybrids, so I'm not sure about that.
Well, very magnanimous indeed. An early championship lead for yourself, Carl, obviously keeping you honest. Is that going to be something that sort of plays into your head? Do you see it as a 2-horse race, or are you one of these drivers that think anything can happen? That's probably what you're going to tell me now.
Yeah, I guess so. It's what is it? Yeah, it's like 7 rounds left, and yeah, a lot can happen. Then there is a lot of fast drivers that maybe haven't got hang of the car yet, but they will pick it up for sure.
Well, I'm sure they will. Overall, in the night, you only dropped 3 points, and well, we couldn't ignore that. So we've decided, as a group, as the directors and Rich and me and Andy, have decided to give you the driver of the round as well. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jack. Feels good.
Yeah, congratulations. I should say that you get that driver of the round award on the provision that you don't win by 10 seconds again next week. So you've earned that driver of the round now. You don't need to show off again next week. Congratulations on that, Eric. Right, third place finisher was Ethan Hill, and Ethan, I think I call that a masterclass of defensive driving towards the end of that race, because that was a really, really tough battle for third place. Did you enjoy it? Is the first question.
No.
Excellent, good.
No,
always nice to hear from a happy racing driver.
No is the answer. It was scary, it was nerve-wracking, but I enjoyed myself, which is the main thing. I'm happy to be back as well, because obviously I had 3 seasons off, or however many it was. But yeah, I was scared, I can't lie.
I've always thought it's one of the hardest things to do is to defend in a Mazda MX5, because that slipstream is so powerful, and then you throw in the hybrid as well, and then you throw in the fact that maybe the other drivers might have better tyre condition than yours. What was the key, do you think, to you actually managing to hang on to that third?
It was just using my hybrid at the correct points, or at the points where it was absolutely necessary. So I knew I saved just about enough to keep Elliott behind me, thankfully, because I'm not that confident. I will say I'm not that confident in the car, but as I've now got a third place, that confidence has now shot right up, which I think is good for the remaining rounds. And I say I'm hoping to be a title contender, but if I'm not, I'm not really too bothered. But yeah.
I think there's definitely the potential for some race wins at the very least, and I think you're going to be up there on the points probably after this first night. We'll get confirmation of that in a moment or two. But great to have you back, Ethan. And yeah, you seem to have slotted right back into it. I'm sure you've not stepped away from the sim altogether in the months since we last saw you. How much practice have you been getting in?
I not much. Obviously, I was Bono for the team last in the touring car with hybrid, as the team called me. And obviously, I was away for a sim for 5 weeks, as I was very lucky to go out to America. So I haven't really, apart from one off occasion, I haven't done any sim racing for 5-6 weeks, and I've only had a week practice for this championship. So to come home with a P3, it feels like a race win for me, which I will most gladly take.
Wow, blimey. Right, well, get out of here then. Get practicing for Road America, because if you actually put a bit more practice into the next round, I think you're going to be right up there winning races. Ethan, well done. Really enjoyed watching that battle.
Thank you. I won't come off for sim anymore. I'll see you later.
Yeah, good. That's good to hear. Ethan Hill then rounds out the podium finishers then, and rounds out what's been a very, very entertaining night all round, I think. We've been joined by another special guest in the comms box. I'm not sure if he came here for an interview, but I'm going to interview him anyway. Rich Hayden, who is the man behind the madness that we've just seen tonight. And Rich, first night of racing with the new hybrid MX5s. How did you think it went?
Good evening. Yeah, that seemed to go quite well. I was a little bit concerned because everybody's been a bit rusty because obviously we've been a few weeks off of racing. New car, obviously we've made it a little bit more lively as well. So I thought it was going to be a little bit difficult, but no, I'm impressed. It was good racing.
It really was. I mean, the MX5 is a personal favourite of mine anyway. I do enjoy MX5 racing, but...
I know that indeed.
These MX5s, though, these are a little different to anything else that I've driven. The drivers all seem to be saying that they are a real handful now, and that's music to my ears. The car shouldn't be too easy to drive, I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the one thing about the MX5. It's such a good car, handles so well, but it's, you know, you don't really need to grab hold of it like you do of this one. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to give it a little bit more power, not ridiculous amount of power, and obviously give it a little bit of a hybrid as well, just to add some spice into it, and also the 3 compounds of tyres, which we've changed. We did a little bit of a change on the tyres. We made the softs last a little bit longer than they were doing in the touring car championship last time. So just to add some more options in for the drivers, whether they go soft, medium or hard. So yeah, it was really good. Enjoyed it.
What did you make of the results that we've seen tonight? Obviously, Eric Axelsson is going to leave here as the championship leader, dominated that first race. Do you think he's going to have it all his own way?
So I'd like to say, I mean, look, Eric's a lovely guy. I really like him. I get on with him, but I hope he doesn't run away with it.
Yes,
we don't want that to happen. But no, Kyle did really well. Hey, really impressed with Kyle. He's literally just over a year of racing with us. He's been, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. It was his year anniversary of racing with us, and he's come on so much in the last year. So impressed with him and how he's becoming more and more mature as he goes along. So yeah, well done, Kyle. Well done to Eric as well, because that was just, you know, amazing racing. So hopefully now we'll give him a little bit of ballast because he's going to be in the championship lead. That might bring him back into the clutches of the other drivers.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. We didn't have any of the success ballast, if you like, because it was the first round of the championship, so that changes as of next week. And Eric is still only a level 3 driver within the VRRC, so he wasn't carrying as much ballast as he perhaps could have been there. So yeah, that may well peg him back.
Yeah, we'll be giving him another. Well, he's on 15 kilograms tonight from the driver ranking, but we'll be throwing another 25 at him because he's going to be in the lead of the championship. So hopefully that'll make it a little bit more interesting for the next race.
I'm sure it will. Rich, pleasure as always. Thanks for joining us, and thanks as always for your hard work behind the scenes as well.
Thanks, mate, and thanks to everybody. Thanks to Lewis for the broadcast. You're doing really good, mate, and thank you to you guys as well.
There we go. A very happy and positive end to what's been a very happy and positive night, actually. Jack, I really enjoyed the racing tonight here at Laguna Seca, and I can't wait to do it all again next week at Road America. I think we're in for a really good championship here.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of eyebrows raised when we thought we'd stick the hybrid on the MX5, but like Rich was saying, the MX5 apparently is a very accessible car. I've never managed to access it very well, but yeah, so it's nice to see that it's challenging a few drivers, and obviously a lot of these tracks they haven't driven before either, and I think that adds to the spectacle. So yeah, can't wait for it.
Indeed, right. Can we have a look at the championship standings? I wonder. If we can't, then I've got them in front of me anyway, because they have now been updated after the first night of racing. And as if by magic, I think we are going to be able to have a quick look at, well, we all know who is leading the championship, because Eric Axelsen has only, as Jack said, dropped 3 points tonight, but he does lead the way, 54 points then. So all that hard work and that dominant first race victory, he's only 7 points clear of Felvis, who I think we saw in that second race is going to be a thorn in his side all season long. Elliot Daltonaire's third. Ethan Hill is fourth, so he said that he was kind of hoping to be in championship contention, but wasn't too fussed either way. I think he might change his mind when he sees how far up the table he is, and then it's very close, isn't he? He's 1 point ahead of Nicky Taylor, who is 1 ahead of Martin, who is 3 ahead of Joel Lask, with Jens Verhoeven, Simon Thorpe and Nathan Blank indeed rounding out the top 10. In fact, Nathan Blank tied for 10th with Sam Zero and John Jones. So that's how the championship looks then as we leave Laguna Seca and head into the rest of our championship. And as I've said a couple of times, we head next to Road America. And Jack, that's something that I'm really looking forward to. If ever there was a track that was made for MX5 racing, it's got to be that one.
Yeah, it's tight, twisty, but loads of overtaking opportunities, nice and fast, big straights as well. The hybrid, the slipstream, everything's going to work in an advantage there. And hopefully a lot of drivers will be eyeing that one up. 40-minute race as a bit of a spectacular.
Of course, yes, it is a pit stop race as well. I've forgotten about that. We've got a handful of these 40-minute races dotted into the championship. So, yeah, different dynamic altogether, and tyre management for sure is going to be a factor there. So that is what's coming up next in the MX5 Cup. But, Jack, as always, there's a lot more racing to be had on the VRRC, and I hope you can tell us all about it.
Yeah, I'd actually forgotten this live was coming up. We've only had a week off, or 2 weeks off, wouldn't you? But yeah, plenty of Assetto Corsa action on VRRC. You've obviously seen the championship tonight, but there's more fun races. I believe they've even got a pick and mix style race now in how they do the fun races, so that should be pretty cool. Time attacks as well. They're all for the time attacks are for prizes. The fun races are open to anybody. You don't have to be a VRRC member. You could just be a random person on YouTube watching this and decide you want to get involved in the community. Well, the fun races are the best opportunity for that. I believe they're on Sunday nights these days. There's also going to be iRacing events that are going on that are going to be organised by VRRC, as well as Dirt Rally, and we do monthly stages on Dirt Rally 2.0 to try and open up a few more sims for people to try and get involved and hopefully have a good time. And even if you just want to join the Discord, the VRRC Discord, there's plenty of chatter on there about Forza, about iRacing, about Assetto Corsa Competizione, anything you want to be racing, basically, you can get on there, and there's plenty of people that will help and support you.
Indeed, yes, and some really exciting stuff on the VRRC servers at the moment. The Time Attack League is ongoing now, and as you can see, it's got a very much a single-seater flavour to it at the moment, as throughout the rounds you can get to grips with some iconic single-seaters, working your way up through the junior formulae into some proper Formula 1 machinery. I'll tell you what, I quite fancy a go of round 4, the 80s Ferrari around the classic Silverstone circuit. That's going to be really good fun. So yes, the Time Attack League, again, you can find all of the information on this on the VRRC Discord server. So if you've not already joined VRRC Discord, then make sure you do so. Round 1 then started last week, or really on the 3rd of September, whenever that was, and it is the Formula 4 car around Imola, one of my absolute favourite circuits. So that's definitely something worth having a go of. We have also got, as Jack mentioned, the fun races, which this week, I believe, as you can see, it's a pick and mix format. So what he means by this is there's a vote, I believe, in the Discord. Drivers pick basically a car that they want and then a track that they want to race at. And I believe, Jack, that the current pick, and this says an awful lot about the kind of people we've got in the VRRC Discord servers, this week they're racing transit vans around the Nordschleife, because why not?
Yeah, and they've already done Winnebagos, I think, around the Top Gear test track as well. So, yeah, fun races, emphasis on the fun, probably, rather than the racing. I think as soon as they jump into something like the Clio Cup or the Ginetta or a Radical or something like that, a bit more actual race car, then maybe they'll start taking it a little bit more seriously. But for the time being, they want to have a bit of a laugh, and that's exactly what we design it for. So fingers crossed that some people, as I said, not necessarily the drivers who take part on a Wednesday night, jump in for that, and then they feel like they get a bit of a feel for it, they like the people, and then they can always jump into the championships.
Yes, and as you can see, fixed setup as well. So you don't have to spend hours working out what rear camber settings your transit van should have to get the best lap time around the Nordschleife. Just jump in and get stuck straight into the racing. So lots of fun to be had at the VRRC, including, of course, our next round of the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Turbo Cup, which will be coming next week from Road America. Same time, same place, qualifying kicking off at 7:30. We'll be live on the broadcast 5 or 10 minutes before that for all of the build-up for what's going to be a very entertaining night of racing with the 40-minute pit stop race, the first of them this season. Well, thank you very much, Jack and Lewis and Rich and everyone else for your hard work through this first broadcast. We'll all be back together again for the next round. We hope that you'll join us too. We'll see you then.
Woo!